The IL's combat might look pretty simple at first, until you realize how much of it comes down to things the game never actually tells you, such as invisible hitboxes, weird timings, and mechanics that don't look like they should work, but still do. Before getting into specific 1v1 matchups, I think it's way more important to understand why fights play out the way they do. Once you understand how this unnecessarily scuffed combat system actually works, you'll start noticing patterns in every matchup and predicting how they'll play out. This will be part 1 of what will probably turn into a small series of Utah guide videos that I'm going to make, so if you have any questions or any specific matchups you'd like me to cover, please drop them down in the comments. If you're completely brand new to the game, you should check out the link in the description for a beginner guide before watching this one. There are 2 types of hitboxes in the game: attack and body. Body hitboxes are constant in size, always active, and receive damage from attack hitboxes, which for most dinos is located at the head. For all carnivores, the head and tip of the tail are inactive hitboxes unless the dino bites, unlike body hitboxes, which are constantly active, meaning that the head and the tip of the tail basically don't exist until the carnivore bites. In this clip, for example, you can see me stop biting when he's close to hitting my tail. Even though it looks like it won't physically connect, the tail hitbox is quite a bit finicky. Here's another example. The attack hitbox lasts throughout the entirety of the bite animation. This makes it possible to land 2 bites almost instantly if you time it correctly. This is called double bites. By timing your bite so that you make contact with your opponent at the very end of your first bite animation, you are able to start your second one instantly, instead of biting when you reach your opponent, waiting for the first animation to finish, and then biting again on top of that. When trying to double bite, you'll need to take into account your speed, your opponent's speed, and the distance between you. This is especially important in all mirror matchups, where both sides are the same dino. Your idle animations and the direction that you look when attacking actually affect the area your attack covers on most dinos except for those shown on screen. Some dinos have very active idle animations. Sarah is a great example of this. Notice when I hold my sniff key for just a little, it resets my idle animation. This can be helpful for Sarahs to get their bite on target when a Utah's riding them. When tail riding, you should always have Z-turn enabled. Look straight down, use your mouse to point yourself, while holding W and tapping shift to move where you need to be in the ride. Also, despite what many players think, all attacks are always the same size. There is no such thing as hitbox extension or shaking your head does more damage or anything like that. But you might be saying, if that's the case, then what are these? How did I just die from so far away? These are sniping. Aside from your body, there's also this tiny, completely separate, invisible hitbox that exists to the left of your dino in a straight line from your center and is a bit higher than the spine. What this means is, depending on the dino that you're playing, you can get hit from a specific distance to your left without the attack visually connecting. It might just look like another broken thing in this broken game that you have to deal with, but it's actually one of the few consistent things in this game. And I feel like once you understand it, you can consciously avoid dying to it during your fights. Snipes can happen with every dino. It just so happens that some of them have their snipe hitbox way too high up or have their attack hitboxes way too far down. For example, Shant and Spino have their snipe hitboxes way too high up to hit consistently, while Theory can only snipe things smaller than a Utah on flat ground, and Kama can't snipe anything. But it's always possible as long as something can attack high enough where it would reach the snipe height at the correct distance. You also see many players call sniping head nodding or nod biting, which is wrong and stupid. Usually, when trying to snipe something of similar size, you have to look up at some point in your bite animation when your attack hitbox is active, because naturally bite animations like to go down, and as I said, the snipe hitbox is physically higher than the spine of whatever you're trying to snipe. You notice here that the Rex didn't look up to snipe the Utah. This is because the Rex's head is already high enough to reach the Utah's snipe. The distance to the left and the height scales based on the dino's size. If the dino is bigger, the hitbox will be further away and higher. For example, a Utah can be sniped about 3.5 squares from its left center, while a Rex can be sniped from around 6 squares away. As the name suggests, snipes are pretty precise. If you're even a little too close, too far, or completely on the wrong side, your hits won't connect. As a Utah, your main focus during your fights will be moving in a way to avoid getting sniped. What this means is that when you get behind another dino, you should have awareness of your position and angle to avoid getting sniped when tail riding, while also making sure not to overstep into your opponent's attacks. For most Utah players, this is going to be the main struggle. Even if you can hold a good position to avoid snipes, it's still so easy to miss the moment when your opponent suddenly stops moving. This kind of timing is something that you're just going to have to practice by yourself, but there are still some things worth knowing beforehand. Most dinos are able to aim their bites by looking towards the direction that gives them the best possible chance to hit you. This is usually by looking straight down on a Brakechecks or looking towards the direction that makes the lower jaw closest to the Utah. Now obviously there are way too many Brakechecks positions to talk about, so I'm just going to talk about the main idea. Whether you're safe or not on a Brakechecks mainly depends on two things: your position relative to your opponent, and where your opponent's lower jaw can reach underneath. On some positions, your opponent might have to time their bites with yours. When you bite, your head goes down, then comes back up, but your attack hitbox stays active for the entire animation. So if their bite reaches its slowest point right as your head is coming back up, they can hit you. Examples of good down bites are Acro and Spino, with Acro being able to reach slightly behind its legs and Spino slightly in front of its knees. And examples of bad down bites are Aloe, Dilo, and Sarah. Sarah, however, can make up for this with its idle animations. Not exactly a down bite, but more of a next to shoulder bite. You can see here that Ty waited so that his idle animation would make him able to bite where I currently am, so I jumped backwards to avoid that. In this other fight though, I saw that this Sarah was not using his idles, so I kept my position until he moved again. Expect to die a lot in practice. It's okay to want to play as safe as possible, especially in survival to keep the fight going in your favor, but on deathmatch, you have the ability to respawn just a few seconds after losing and trying the fight again. With that being said, here's what you should avoid doing. In Utah vs Rex and Utah vs Giga, things like pivoting, twirling, jumping back, not biting on Brakechecks, timing your bites on Brakechecks, or looking right when you're unsafe on a Brakechecks, especially in agreed fights, are seen as cheap because Rex and Giga have no real way of dealing with those things, which just means that you can do as many mistakes as you want without getting punished for them, essentially nullifying the entire point of practicing these fights in the first place. This is basically the Utah version of when something bigger uses the pads or water against you after just agreeing to fight you. Also, I think it goes without saying, but bleeding in deathmatch is just...
Fuck you.
By the way, have you ever gotten hit by an attack and thought, what? Or, fuck, how would I die? This is what's called Desync. The IELTS servers are not very good at tracking your exact position at all times, so what you see on your screen may not be exactly where the server thinks you are.
Easy.
There are a few ways to fix this though, like respawning, rejoining the server, or hitting an obstacle in a specific way on purpose so that you get rubber banded to where you actually are. By the way, the ping display in the performance stats on the top right is just wrong. Like, there's no way an EU player like myself gets 30 ping on an NA server. Back in older versions of the game, the ping display used to show ping correctly, but with the newer updates, they either made the ping display straight up lie to make the game look more optimized, or the devs just destroyed its ability to properly display the correct ping. You can still check your real ping by looking at the favorites tabs in your game servers, or by pinging the server's IP directly in command prompt and seeing how much it returns. So yeah, the Isle Legacy is far from a perfect game with a pretty unique way of PvP that I've never seen before in any other game. With the weird quirks in its combat system, it makes it look like as if the game created a skill ceiling for itself and the depth that was otherwise impossible to create intentionally.